A huge happy Welsh Wine Week to you all. I'm Alex Green. I'm one of the chief winos at Chilled and Tannin, which is Cardiff's bodacious vintners, and I'm proudly Welsh and proud to be here today.
What? That's outrageous.
We're going to tell you all about bodacious wine today. We're very pleased to be here today and to have you joining us for one of the Welsh Wine Week events. We were very kindly invited by Richard and Joy to come to Ancre Hill Vineyard in Monmouthshire to try a wonderful selection of Welsh sparkling wines. So thank you very much for having us here.
Absolute pleasure.
Pleasure to have you here.
So we've assembled this selection of wines, just to let you know that you can join the conversation by popping some comments onto the live stream today.
Nice one, please.
Keep it clean, and please make sure I don't swear.
We'll bleep you.
You can bleep me out, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get that later on. And you can also go on to welshwineweek.co.uk. I highly recommend you go on there and have a look at some of the other events that are taking place this week. And obviously, I should give up my own place a little plug and just say that you can visit chilledandtannin.com, where some of the wines that we're trying and some other Welsh delights are available as well. If you are sharing this or talking about it, please use the hashtag Welsh Wine Week. Excellent. I think that's just about all of the housekeeping there. So, Welsh Wine Week is all about encouraging people to explore the wonderful wines that are made all over Wales. There's 30 vineyards, or possibly more now, I think, who are growing grapes for wine in Wales. But we shouldn't be surprised that there's great wines in Wales because you guys were actually voted the best sparkling wine in the world, I believe. Is that correct?
We were a few years ago, I think.
Yes, we were for our 2008 sparkling. We won something called the Bollicini del Mondo, which is an Italian competition run by the magazine that's the Italian equivalent of Decanter magazine.
Fantastic.
And it was brilliant, wasn't it?
It was a nice wine, yeah.
Marvellous. And you've been making wine or growing the vines here for about 15 years, is that correct?
Yes, we planted the first vines in 2006, 2007.
So behind us you can see Chardonnay, so that was planted in 07, so 14 years old, isn't it?
There you are,
Time
fantastic.
goes on.
So, I mean, I should ask the question really. I mean, what motivated you to grow some vines and establish a vineyard on the sunny slopes of Monmouthshire?
Well, it was your fault. You better own up to this one.
No, it wasn't my fault. It was your fault.
So,
No.
go on.
Richard sold his business and wasn't really of the state of mind to retire. And we did a lot of travelling initially and seemed to end up in vineyards wherever we were. And I've always loved wine, always been interested in the whole process, and started thinking maybe this was something we could do as a time, to do with our time.
It's a sort of love of wine and wanting to go that stage further and to make our own wine. First of all, we started growing our own vines, and then the Three Clies used to make our wine very well, I've got to say. But then we wanted to do it ourselves. We became biodynamic and organic, so we had to make our own wine basically. And it's gone from there. And then we bought a farm, didn't we, 6 years ago, and we planted another 8 hectares, and we got another 23 hectares which we can plant, I think. So on it goes.
Fantastic. And so your philosophy from the beginning has been around taking this more sort of natural approach to making the wine, and terroir. So I mean, my assumption would be, and I'm probably incorrect, that organic and biodynamic would be rather tough to adhere to in South Wales, but you guys are taking it on with aplomb. So.
Well, not at all actually. It's a bit of a misnomer. Farming biodynamically actually helps in the sort of fairly difficult climate that we've got with all the things we spray and everything. So it's a lot easier, combined with very good canopy management, of course. Much easier to control some of the sort of diseases that are around, like powdery and downy mildew. So most years we are totally disease free, and we put put it down to biodynamics, don't we?
Yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. And all the wines that we're trying today are adhering to those principles as well.
The 3 sparklings that we've got are all organic, certified organic, because we got our organic certification in 2013, and our biodynamic certification in 2014. Because obviously it takes 3 years for one, 4 years for the other. But obviously they were all grown biodynamically, and made biodynamically. But
fantastic. Well, should we try the first one?
Let's go, shall we?
okay, shall I pass it to you and I'll let you do
yes. I have to see how my sommelier skills work out. So tell us a little bit more about this. So this is the Blanc de Noir.
That's the Blanc de Noir. Thank you. So this is a non-vintage. So it's a blend of our 13 and 14 vintages. So the 13 vintage has had 4 years on the lees. The 14 vintage has had 3 years on the lees. It's 100% Pinot Noir. We make our sparkling wines slightly differently from the norm, in as much as we ferment them for the first fermentation as if we're making still wine. So we ferment it on the lees. So with all,
and a long fermentation,
and a very long
16
fermentation,
months.
and it's left to go through fermentation naturally, and that imparts a lot of flavour into the wine. And then for the second fermentation, when we bottle it, we add a very neutral organic yeast. So we're not imparting any flavour at that stage. That's literally just to start the second fermentation.
Fantastic.
And we don't fine or filter any of our wines, even our sparkling wines. So occasionally they may look slightly opaque. It's not a wine fault. It's actually imparting flavour into the wine.
Great, and it retains that flavour rather than filtering it out.
It actually increases the flavour, because if you've got the lees in there, they're still imparting flavour and body into the wine.
I mean, I think, but this is just, the apple, Brazil nuts on there, really nice nuttiness. Are those sort of brioche notes coming from the extended time that is left on the lees? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
This one's had about 4 years on the lees?
Yes, between 3 and 4 years, yeah.
So I get sort of honey and lemon zest on the nose there.
It's definitely citrusy. Quite a bit of apple as well, I think. That sort of crisp, clean freshness.
Definitely Cox's apple for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, Alex, this is 0 dosage. Okay, so there's no sweetener added for people who don't understand what dosage means.
So it is very dry. It is a brut.
Exactly, and that's very on trend at the moment. I think the more sort of 0 dosage approach. And again, is that another part of your sort of lower intervention sort of way of making a wine? Yeah.
Yes,
very
I think
much so. Yeah.
Our feeling is that you interfere with the wine as little as possible. And when you do anything, it's to enhance the wine rather than to make it something it's not.
It's lovely. It's such a nice fine mousse, but that richness on the palate really comes through. And how do you find growing Pinot Noir here?
Fine. I know Pinot has a reputation of being slightly difficult to grow.
Yeah.
I would say Chardonnay is a bigger challenge, actually. Chardonnay is quite prone to powdery mildew unless you're very, very particular on your canopy management. Pinot I find is slightly easier to grow, so it belies its reputation. But each site is different, and this part of the world may suit it better. But the Chardonnay does grow very well here.
Fantastic. Okay, should we move on to the next one, which is the Chardonnay? It's the Blanc de Blanc.
It's the Blanc de Blanc.
Should I pass that over?
Please do, yeah.
Should I do that out?
Yes, please. So this is a 2013 vintage, isn't
This is a 2013. So this has had 5 years on the lees. 100% Chardonnay, as we said. Again, non-dosage. I think that 5 years on the lees and the fermentation in oak has really brought out those real brioche, autolytic qualities in the wine.
Yeah, it's very, very different to the Pinot Noir.
It is very different, yes.
Something like sort of like almost apple tartish, and
I get sweet pear.
yeah,
That sort of apple tartish.
Yeah, that's almost tartatan type.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's quite an autolytic wine, this, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's got that real sort of brioche, yeasty sort of nose to it, and it gives it that heavier mouthfeel.
Absolutely, yeah.
Quite creamy, isn't it?
Yeah, very mouth sort of coating, and just really full, and just lots of nice, almost sort of zesty grapefruit and things like that coming on there as well, and the finish is really nice on there.
Very long finish, isn't it? It's good on the mid palate as well, I think.
Yeah, and this is very low in sulphur as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Incredibly low, yeah. It's in single figures, I think. All these three wines are single figure sulphur, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I was doing some mental maths, and it sort of said, sort of like a 1/12 of the limit for sort of sparkling wine made organically. So it's for those people who are susceptible to a bit of sulfites in their wine, then it's very good, isn't it?
Yeah. We put a little bit of dilute sulphur into the pressing tray when we're pressing, and that's it. That's it.
Marvelous. And you use Austrian oak with this, is that correct?
Yes, because the wood is grown at altitude, so it grows more slowly. It's a much more dense grain.
Yeah.
So it's a much softer oak.
Yeah.
It's not as astringent as some other
You
oaks.
can tell that on the palate. It's,
Yes.
It's kind of it's got that sort of sort of a little bit of sort of oxygen impact on it, but it's still just very soft.
Yes.
And you have a foudre that you use as well for some of your wines.
That's also Austrian, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
In fact, this Blanc de Blanc was actually fermented in the Voudre. So it's a 1,500 litre Voudre.
So that's a huge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
It is quite big.
three times.
It's gorgeous.
We'll pop some photos of that on the on our socials
Yes.
later
No,
on.
you must do. It's
Piece
lovely.
of furniture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely delicious. It's very nice.
It's
One more
drinking
sip
really
before,
well at the moment.
Marvelous.
Okay.
Fantastic. And then I really like the tasting note that you guys have put for this third one. So this is the Rosé Sparkling. Again, it's a 2013, and you said that it pairs very well with a pavlova, which is my all-time favourite dessert. If anyone out there is interested, so I think the diversity of sparkling wine with the different things you can pair it with, from sort of shellfish to sort of whites of meats or even desserts and cheeses. I think it's it just you really get a lot of bang for your buck, don't you?
I think you do, and I think a lot of people think that you can't pair them with food, that you have to just have them as an aperitif. But you can. They go very well with all different sorts of food. I mean, this I think goes, as we say, beautifully with the pavlova. Or goes really well with sashimi.
Yeah, fantastic. I can get that.
A great mate of ours, Roger Jones, is a Michelin star chef. If you're watching, Rog, hi. He pairs this with Pembrokeshire lobster.
Oh, marvellous.
And it is stunning, isn't it?
I would definitely be in for some of that. And I mean, it's definitely got that umami kind of savoury element to it. I mean, you've still got the sort of the red fruits and the things you'd expect from a rosé champagne, but it's just got a real sort of deepness and almost mushroomy, isn't it? Yeah,
that's what we say. It's mushroomy. It's quite, and up until fairly recently, it had quite a mushroomy nose as well, quite a fungal nose, didn't it? And we think that's just the way our Pinot Noir develops. The longer it ferments.
Yeah, it's long lees aging of Pinot, I think.
Yeah,
you've had a bit of skin contact, obviously, to get the colour, and that's what's giving it that nose, I think. Yeah.
It's lovely. It's almost got a sort of a tinge of orange to it, doesn't it? Which is, it just makes it very enticing. Yeah. Where in the bottle,
it's got a really nice texture, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can tell it spent some time, harmoniously sitting together.
Yes.
And I mean, I think don't see that many British sparkling wines which which have that kind of aging potential. But this is it's a 2013, and you think this would be good for at least another few years? Do you think?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yes, I would think so.
Definitely 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
I would think so. We do add a tiny bit of sparkling rosé. I think primarily because we feel it benefits it, and I think people, as a general rule, expect a sparkling rosé or to be slightly sweeter than a sparkling white. But again, it's a brute because we don't add that much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of flavour, but without that sort of, you know,
Yes.
that sweetness to it. But then there's nothing wrong with a bit of sweetness in a sparkling wine.
Absolutely.
No,
And
nothing at all.
and the next one we're going to be trying is a brew. So wonderful 3 wines there from Ancre Hill. We've got a question. Oh, marvellous. Thank you, Tom.
Just Wine and Dough have asked if it's Stockinger or Porsche casks.
Stockinger.
Stockinger.
We do have 2 Porsche barrels, but we use it for our red Pinot. Stockinger for the sparkling, yeah.
And the Boudreaux is Stockinger.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Definitely going to go and have a look at those.
Now, this is the bit I'm looking forward to, tasting these other
Yes.
incredible wines. I've never tasted any of them before. No, I'm wrong. I have tasted Collins Pefriog, which I know is a terrific wine, but I haven't tasted the others. So
Marvellous. Well, this is one we've added to the Chilled and Tannin range quite recently, which is the Belfry. So this is from Pembrokeshire. I think it is the Lampeter Vale. So I think, you know, south west Wales recently has been you know, put on the map by Wally the Walrus, I believe, who's been hanging out there.
Yes.
Who I think he's on his holidays now
I think
to
he's gone to
Cornwall.
Cornwall, but
Yeah.
he was intended
Like
to,
everyone
wasn't
else. if you're watching this, you should come to Wales, not Cornwall. I'm from Devon originally, so I'm allowed to say that. And badmouth the Cornish. Okay, fantastic. So this is, I think this is the first vintage that that's been produced by Andy, Fiona, and Ryan Mounsey at Belfry. Like a lot of the wines that we're trying, actually, like a lot of the wines, you know, in Wales that you know that we're seeing now, it seems to be a family affair a lot of the time. And certainly, I wouldn't describe any of these as it's not a cottage industry, but it's people who are very curious about wine, you know, passionate about you know, sort of giving it a go. And I suppose as you know, as Dom and Rob and I are doing now with our acre of mud currently, you know, it's about trying new things. And this is sparkling wine. I believe the main grape that they're using from their vineyard is Cheval Blanc.
Cheval Blanc.
Yeah. So what do you know about that?
Well, Cheval Blanc is a terrific hybrid grape, particularly good for sparkling wine. And in fact, we were talking about at the beginning of this about the Bollicini del Mondo that we won.
Mm-hmm.
That wine was 100% Cheval Blanc.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
And I think it beat a very, very, very pricey Bollinger in the second place from memory. So it shows what can be done with Cheval. So I think it's a terrific grape variety to plant.
And really lends itself to sparkling wine.
Yeah.
Because it's got that nice level of acidity.
Absolutely, and a grape which seems to thrive in the Welsh countryside as well.
Yes, it's a hybrid grape, and so it's very much developed for cooler climates.
Yeah.
So yes, it's you know, it can withstand a lot of the elements.
Absolutely, yes. And so I guess, you know, the ones we tried from you guys were, I suppose, much more the noble grape varieties, but certainly the cooler climate grapes are, I suppose, a bit more maybe reliable in the, you know, with the Welsh climate, and maybe a little less susceptible to those kind of, you know, bouts of frost and things like that.
Yeah, well, certainly they're easier to manage. Really, the hybrids they tend to be high yielding as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's the ideal grape to plant this. This is delicious.
It's really full,
this for me has got a surprisingly heavy mouthfeel, which I think is delightful. So a very fresh nose as well.
It's a really lovely fine mousse in the mouth, and almost quite sort of a couple of almost exotic-y kind of flavours going on there on the palate, and some elderflower. You know, and some rose petal as well. So really,
definitely got the elderflower with almost that sort of peachy.
Yeah,
almost stone fruit type.
Yeah.
But,
really nice.
But is this their first wine?
I believe it is their first vintage. So I know that they're tuning in, so they may correct us on that. But yes, and I think with this, they've already gone sort of to aim beyond, I suppose, what the minimum quality levels would be. So this one's 18 months on lees, and I believe that's more than a lot of champagnes, isn't it? Yeah.
And you can definitely taste that in the weight of it on your
that
palate.
Gives it a heavier mouthfeel. Yeah. I think this is their
delicious.
first wine. It's a terrific effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a-
Well done.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, cheers.
Absolutely terrific.
Lovely.
Great Mouncy family. Really good.
It's really good, and I think it's about sort of £30-33, which we'll put all the prices for the wines up later on. But again, that's very
Cheap
good
at the
value.
price.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, that's very good.
super. I think it has a little bit of Pinot Noir and some Chardonnay in there as well. But
Okay.
the Cebol Blanc is just really,
Yeah.
it's really interesting on there. So, a general Welsh wine question. I mean, what makes Wales so well suited to producing quality wines? Would you say?
I think you've got to go by area. So it's parts of Wales are ideal for growing vines. So we're talking about there are areas in North Wales, obviously. Certainly the border country, you can grow places like Montgomery, for example. But Monmouthshire, the Vale of Glamorgan, and mid Pembrokeshire, for example, just perfectly sited places with microclimates,
Exactly, yeah.
good sheltered vineyards.
You know, there is this thing about it always rains in Wales, but that's because we've got a lot of hills, a lot of mountains, and it rains on those. It
Yes.
doesn't rain everywhere all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the other things about Wales, a lot of these new vineyards have been planted in the main, including here, they've been planted on ancient mudstone, sandstone soils, very rich soils, which haven't been used for intensive arable farming, like in the parts of the southeast of England, for example. So, and that comes across, I think, that terroir comes across, and in particular, I think the acidity of the wines is absolutely terrific.
Oh, it's absolutely spot on. It's so well balanced.
Yeah.
And you can feel that richness that's coming from the soil
Yes,
as well, can't you?
Yeah, you can.
Marvelous. And just one more question. I mean, a big thing about Welsh Wine Week is to blow the trumpet for Welsh wine, but also the distinction that there is between Welsh wine and maybe wine made elsewhere in Great Britain. So, what would you say are the main distinctions, or should be the main distinctions?
I think we've got a more of a diversity of wines made in Wales. I may get into trouble for saying this, but I think in England a lot of the wines have all gone down the same route. They've planted the same grape varieties. They make the wine in the same way.
They use the same yeast to do the second fermentation, inoculation, for example. And it's not a criticism; it's just a statement of fact. And they are very much samey, and some of them are terrific quality, of course.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bit more variation in Wales, and I think people like we're going to taste Conways next. There are innovative people like Colin and his family who are trying to make wine slightly differently and looking at different grape varieties and different ways of making the wine. I think you'll find this wine of Colin's is a very young, fresh sort of style. I think it's a terrific wine. I love this.
Fantastic. I mean, and there's lots of awards being dished out at the moment to Welsh wine as well, and a few which were announced the last couple of weeks, which I think we've spoken about on the Welsh Wine website. And this one's won a few awards before, but we were saying a little bit earlier on that sort of whereas some of these wines have got that sort of extended lees aging, this is one where it's made in a slightly fresher style. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my belief. Yeah, it's almost sort of like the style of a Loire Clément for me.
Yeah.
And that's praise. I mean, I think that's I love this one.
I think you can tell by the nose. It's fresher. It's lighter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got that sort of orange blossom sort of. So this is from the north of Wales. This is Gwynflan Conwy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Charlotte and Colin, and it's almost literally on a Welsh mountainside. Is that correct? Sort of. So it's
just overlooking the town, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
Just on the outskirts of the town.
And I used to have many a holiday here in my youth to Conwy, and so it's I mean, you think some people might think that that's too far north or not warm enough, but I mean, this goes to show it's absolutely fantastic. It's all about finding those microclimates.
It is.
Isn't it,
I
where it
think
works.
in a marginal climate, and anywhere in the world, if you're in a marginal climate, the site selection is more important.
They've got a really good site. It's nicely sheltered, and
Yeah.
so that's what's important, I think. I'm getting a lot of lychees on this now.
Yeah,
all of a
lots
sudden.
of lychee.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just very crisp.
Mm.
And now, some of these elements are probably coming from the grape, and this is another really good. I mean, it's a variety which Wales is really adopting and doing well with, and it's Solaris.
Yeah.
So this was the first Solaris sparkling that I've tried, certainly, and it's, yeah, you can tell it's very, you know, it's got a definite distinction to something that might be made from a more traditional sparkling wine grape.
Yes. Yeah, it is
So
very light.
Solaris is quite widely grown, so Colin makes a terrific Solaris. I believe Highfield use Solaris as well, and I know Montgomery make a really terrific Solaris sparkling as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting grape variety.
And it's one which is, you know, it's early ripening, high sugar, you know, which are two things which, you know, go hand in hand with making good sparkling wine.
Exactly.
And I believe it. I mean, I have to say, I find some Welsh grape variety names a little bit of a mouthful, but you know, some of the hybrids that we've got in Wales, like Solaris and Orion, they have some very you know, so very catchy names. I've got to say.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. But yeah, really terrific one.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done, Colin. And
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions on the feed?
Conway have just said we benefit from the Fohan effect of Snowdonia.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. Like a rain shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you are then. Like Alsace on sea. Fantastic. And we're going to another coastal vineyard now, and this is the west of Wales. I think this is your neck of the woods.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, just a road from.
We're Cardi,
Our
so
home.
there's a fellow Cardi wine producer here. It's we have visited the Evanses, and I would say by a long way it's the prettiest vineyard in Wales. It is absolutely beautiful.
It's lovely. Yeah, it's in a lovely spot.
Excellent. And I'm going to try and pronounce it, if you can correct me. So this is Clayton.
No way.
Correct me, please.
Go back to Devon, mate. My good wife will.
It's Clayton.
There you are. Actually, I stand corrected. So it's from the coastal plain foothills of the Cambrian Mountains, and yeah, I mean, I think that it's a really striking couple of bottles. Again, two that not that I've come across before. Now, you hear horror stories from some producers about, you know, sort of the luck of being a wine maker or a grape grower. I think this vineyard's got some really interesting sort of, you know, stories behind it. I believe it was the place is the site of the last ever pistol duel in Wales. I think someone who used to live in the or was related to the people in the house where the wine's made had to elope to the US after taking part in that. Also on the bottle is a little schooner on there, which was rather ill-fated and went down. And I believe when they were actually planting the vines, there was a few calamities with some of the you know, sort of the people who came in to help put them into the ground. But I have to say, it doesn't show. You know, this is absolutely exceptional stuff. Yeah, yeah.
No, I haven't tasted this one before, so again, I think, you know, all these wines, the noses are so fresh. What grape variety is this, Alex?
Right. So this is Orion. So this is another hybrid, which is come over from Baden in Germany, I believe. Again, you know, good for yield, hardy. I think this is particularly suited to organic growing, which I know the team at this vineyard have dabbled with themselves. And yeah, I mean, it's just it's completely different to the others, but it's absolutely delicious.
Again,
Very
got that nice freshness. That
beautiful long finish on it. That's still there. That's quite a heavy wine again as well. Yeah,
it's
nice
quite
body.
perfumed, lots of mouthfeel, but again, very, very balanced. But yeah, it's just got a lovely long finish to it, hasn't it?
It has.
Really nice acidity.
Yeah,
delicious.
very well balanced.
That's delicious. And it's 100% Orion, is it?
I think it's certainly the dominant one that's in there.
Yeah.
So so this one is Orion. I think the next one has got some Regent in it as well. This is Richard and Sue. So
And there's son Jack, who does a lot of work in the vineyard. So
Yeah.
you're not forgotten, Jack. Put it down.
fantastic. Yeah, really, really.
You're only just right.
That's a
Got
terrific,
12.
terrific wine. That's really nice.
Wonderful, excellent. Right, well, we're going to move on to our last one. I know that we'll look forward to finishing some of these off a little bit later on, I'm sure. So this is the rosé. Now, this one is a 2016. So should probably ask some vintage questions. How was 2016 for you guys?
It was a sort of average year, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was the last year that we had a fair bit of frost, air frost. So 2010 we had some air frost, 2016 and a little bit last year, not too much last year. So it wasn't a great vintage for us. That's why you'll find that most of our sparklings are non-vintage. So we would have, for example, our next Blanc de Noir non-vintage is a 15, 16, 17 because we had low yields. So yeah, I mean, but you know, Aberaeron, different site, different
Grape varieties.
Yeah,
It can make a huge difference.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll tell you what, just already on there, it's got like a very, almost sort of sour cherry, almost some of that herbiness that you might get from like an Italian rosé, I think.
A bit
on
neckly.
there. Yeah.
Not dissimilar from our rosé actually. It's got that sort of herbal quality.
Yes, it's got that nose to it, that sort of almost vegetative, neckly, mushroomy nose.
Yeah, it's lovely. I think it's really, really food friendly.
Yes.
Tip all that one, isn't it? Yeah.
Very rounded, that. Very rounded. I can certainly see this with a strawberry pavlova, for example.
Have to break one out later.
You've got me going now.
No, I'm not doing one for supper.
Oh, come on.
And so this is
Heavy mouthfeel.
yeah,
Really,
Really
rounded.
full,
yeah. Really, that's really nicely
Yes,
textured,
it is.
and that
Again,
finish
very
just
well
goes
balanced.
on and
Yeah.
on.
Long
Yeah.
finish
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
Terrific wine.
Really nice.
Again, a bit of apple and some floral notes on there. Lovely move, so just beautifully made. Yeah, super. And so this is Orion and Regent. Again, Regent is another one of those grapes that came over from Germany, I think.
Giving it the colour, obviously.
Exactly, yeah. And I think Regent's really dark coloured, I think, isn't it? So this must have had just a little kiss of either fresh run juice or just a kiss of those skins. Yeah, exactly. But
I would guess possibly a kiss of the skins.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, there won't be a lot of it in there, I wouldn't have thought. But it makes very nice red wine as well, Regent.
Yes.
I don't know whether Highfield make red wine out of it, but I'm sure they do. But,
yeah, well, so there's a few other vineyards not too far from here which are doing some good stuff with Regent. So really nice. You know, I think it's a super cross section there of wines, and I'm not going to ask which your favourite was and put you on the spot. But one thing I did want to ask is we've heard a lot about the issues with frost on the continent. How has the year started off, or the vintage started off for you? For you both?
For us, it's been perfect. So it's been very, very cold for north this time of year, and it's meant that we've had a lot of cloud cover. For example, in May we had a huge amount of rain. In May we had about 80% of the rain we get in the whole 7-month growing season.
Right.
But it hasn't really impacted on the vines at all, other than, as you can possibly see, there's a lot of weed growth and everything because we haven't been able to get machinery on there to do the hoeing and that sort of thing. But for us, we think it's going to be a perfect season so far. So cold, it means no air frosts. At least the air frosts that came were earlier, so we had no bud bursts or anything, so that it didn't impact on the buds at all. And of course, the last 10 days, the weather's been absolutely glorious, really, really hot. And I think that we're going to probably get quite a warm summer. Whether it's going to be a 2018, we'll have to wait and see. So the seasons this year seem to be following the normal pattern that we used to have, say, 20 years ago for me. So I'm optimistic. Yeah.
So we're hopeful. Signs so far are very promising. So it depends on what the weather throws at us.
Absolutely.
Between now and October, really.
The inflorescences on the vines, particularly on the Pinot this year, there's a huge number. The inflorescences are the young fruit, basically. So touch wood, if we get even a reasonable summer, I think we should be making, not just us, but everybody in Wales will be making a really good vintage this year, I would hope.
Marvellous. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. So I have one final question before we finish up, which is so where do you see you know, I mean, because clearly there's fantastic wines being produced, and I mean this is just the tip of the iceberg, really, isn't it? What do you think the future is for Welsh wine, and where do you see it in the future on the world stage?
Well, I think we have a lot to offer. You know, we've got the variety, as we've seen just from the bottles we've got here. We've got a huge spectrum of different styles of sparkling wine, and we just need to shout about it more, I think, and start being taken seriously by the rest of the world.
I agree. I think it is a question of, you know, we've got so many hidden gems, and people don't realise the quality that's being produced in Wales, and not just sparkling. And some of the still wines being produced are incredible. So people like Montgomery and White Castle, for example, are winning these medals with IWC, etc. With still wines, you know, Colin, Rob had a silver medal with his Pinot Noir, for example. So it's terrific, you know, right across the whole range. I'm really proud of what the boys are doing out there.
Fantastic.
And the gals.
Super. Well, you know, thank you very much for you know, arranging the tasting and letting us try all these wonderful wines. I know that Dom and I are going to have a little wander around the vineyard later on and make some notes for our acre of mud that we've now planted in the Vale of Glamorgan. Sounds like it's in the right place. So lots more stuff happening with Welsh Wine Week for the rest of this week. Tomorrow we have Andy Clark and we have Highwall Griffith, who are doing a cook along with some Welsh wines. Here next Saturday. Howell, yes,
not Highwell.
I googled it on YouTube. So do tune into that tomorrow.
Sorry,
evening.
Don't believe everything Google tells you.
Exactly, yeah. And then Saturday here we've got a yoga and wine session, haven't we? With Wine Yatta, which we encourage anybody who is local or maybe here on a little summer holiday jaunt to come along and take part in that. So have a look at the Ancre Hill website. Loads more stuff on the Welsh Wine Week website that you can take a look at as well. Obviously, we encourage you to come and visit the cellar doors at any of the Welsh vineyards to grab a bottle for yourselves. Do visit chilledandtannin.com. We have some of the wines that we've been tasting today available on there too. Do drop us a line with any other sort of questions. Do we have any other burning questions, Don, that we didn't cover?
No.
Fantastic. So all that leaves us to do is to say thank you very much. Also say hot boil. Yeah.
Hey, you get
got
it
one right at the end. And we'll go back and enjoy this lovely Welsh weather. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Brilliant tasting. Thanks for the support from Conway.
I've been looking forward to watching it.
Were you? I don't know.
You hosted it brilliantly, but
Was it okay?
but you know.